Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at how to create a binned scatter plot in Minitab. So you do have this option again on the list of possible graphs, but this one also works really well from the graph builder because you can play around with the options. And if you've never used it before, this might be a good one to experiment with. Now this is from our last scatter plot, so this is not the graph we want. We want the bin scatter plot. Now, in the bin scatter plot, if you include a categorical variable in the layout and grouping, it will give you three different graphs in this case because our categorical variable has three types. This is just the type A graph, this is the type B graph, and this is the type C graph. I'm going to remove this option. This is left over from the previous scatter plot. I'm going to remove this option. We're just going to create one graph for all of the data. Now, the way that the bin scatter plot works is that it creates a histogram on both the x-axis and the y-axis. And then the bins are color-coded by how many variables, how many observations are in that bin. That's essentially what this does. So if there's a lot of things in the bin, then you get a dark red number. And if there's only a few things, maybe only one thing in the bin, you get this dark blue color. And so you can see where the special concentrations are. One thing that's not the best about this particular scaling version is that when it's white, it's actually in the middle, which is fine if you're actually in the middle, but it can be misleading because the background is also white. And so this might be one of those options that you want to change, sequential from low to high, for instance, and see this way things that are low intensity kind of fade into the background. Things that are high intensity are very dark. But this way you don't have to worry about, okay, so is that white block in the middle? Or here, if it's pale, it fades into the background where there are nothing. Whereas in the diverging case, which worked well for our parallelogram, it doesn't necessarily work very well here because white is middle count and not zero. And so, you know, when they're in the middle, they look like they're blank. And so that's not very useful. So this is a little bit better, the sequential from low to high. But again, it's basically like histograms on both sides. You can imagine the dark variables, the dark bins, they're very tall, coming at you out of the screen. And we can create them. And of course, recall that if you need to add additional features like a title, you can always click on this and then edit the graph options to add things like a binned scatter plot of alcohol versus color intensity. And so you can add things to the graph like that. Now, as we saw earlier, when we first entered it, you can also create multiple graphs where you are color coding only by one category at a time. Because it's on multiple graphs, it is a little bit harder to see how they compare to each other than with the regular scatter plot where they all appeared on the same graph. So again, you know, you want to think carefully about whether you're using a regular scatter plot or a bin scatter plot in the case of looking at some of this data.